Can everyone see this?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
At this time, I'm going to pass it off to Kaden to introduce our team.
Hi, everyone. We're Team 6133, the Nuts. I'm Kaden. I'm going to start off our presentation today of what we think would be useful for rookie teams. We want this to be really conversational, so we'll go through some basic info and what our experiences have taught us, but we can talk about whatever you guys want to hear about. Please ask questions as we go and let us know what obstacles you're facing and how we can help. So this slide is just some quick background info on us as a team. We have 11 members this year. Ultimate goal is our 9th season as an FTC team. None of us have been on the team since its first season, but we have all experienced being new to FTC and not really knowing what's going on. So the information in this presentation is the most basic and relevant stuff we've learned and think would be useful for other teams. Again, this probably won't cover all the information you want to hear, so definitely interrupt us or use the chat to ask any questions. Yeah, our first season was Ring It Up. Yeah, we'll start off with Build Advice.
Hi, I'm Quincy. It's my second year. I want to just give some advice from the build team. If we go to the next slide, sorry. So I want to talk about the parts and materials we use throughout the year. Competition kits we don't really interact with because we typically design and build with our own parts. We're gracious to be sponsored by the manufacturer, our local makerspace, which has plenty of tools and machinery which allow us to make our own custom parts, which we'll get into later. But as far as suppliers for parts, AnyMark, Rev, and Go Builda we use for very specific parts of a robot. AnyMark, there are Never Rest motors and compliant wheels we typically use for our drivetrains. Compliant wheels were great for input last year in the Skystone season. I think AnyMark is it's kind of expensive as far as parts go. So if finances are an obstacle, you may not be able to use these parts. As far as Rev Robotics, good for electronics. The control hubs, which are new this year, are analogous to the expansion hubs from last year. They essentially connect all the parts of your robot. We also use their 5mm hex shafts for specific parts in our drivetrains. And then Go Builda, one con with Go Builda is they use the metric system. We typically get motors from them. Their gear ratios are 21 and 60 to 1, whereas AnyMark is 3.7 to 20 to 1. Metric system in America, our system may not line up, so that could be one con with them. And then as far as custom parts, in our design phase, we use CAD, which is an acronym for computer-aided design. On our team, we use Inventor. I think the 2019 version is typically what we use. It's basically 3D modeling your robot prior to actually building it. We also utilize 3D printers and laser cutters for building custom parts, especially the laser cutter. We go to that a lot. This year, we're using it for our output, or at least a prototype of our output. It allows you to laser out specific shapes, and it's typically faster than 3D printing something with the lack of dimension. At our local makerspace, we also have access to drill presses and other types of machinery. Now, to get more in depth with the motors, the types of motors we have from AnyMark, 20-ohm motors, we typically use those for our drivetrains. Sorry, due to their speed. The way to think about gear reduction, gear ratios, the higher the ratio, essentially, the more torque and lower speed. So that's a trade-off as you get higher, which is why we specifically use this ratio. Because we typically want speed in our matches because we want to get through a lot of things as quickly as possible before end game and the end of the match. We definitely recommend Rev servos. As we said before, we get a lot of our electronics from them. And then Go Builda has come up with specialty servos, which are quite expensive. So as we said before, finances may be an obstacle, especially with how this year is going, or just in general. And then wire management is one of the most important parts of your bot. Essentially, wires connect every aspect of your robot, and without wires, you just have a drivetrain, which won't get anything done.
Okay, hi, I'm Luke. This is my second year on the team, and I'll be talking about some programming stuff. So, next slide. Okay, so there are three main languages you can use in competition robotics. The first is blocks, which is like a graphical block-based programming language. You can use. It's very good if you don't have much programming experience and you might have experience with FLL or Scratch. It's kind of similar to those. So it's very easy to use and understand, but it lacks somewhat in expressivity. If you need to write complex algorithms, or you just generally are a more experienced programmer, we recommend either using Java or Kotlin. Most teams use Java. Our team is a little bit different in that we primarily use Kotlin, but they're similar enough that you can still share code between them, and they're very interoperable, meaning you can write your project and mix between the two languages. Secondly, we like to use GitHub, as do most teams, to manage our large code base. So, like, sometimes we'll be programming on one person's laptop, sometimes on another, and sometimes we'll be both doing different tasks. So to share this code between us so that we have it all in one place, we use GitHub. It's kind of like a Google Drive for your code, if you're familiar with that. Except besides just sharing the code, it provides easy ways to download it, to make different versions, and to track your progress across it. Also, it is very helpful to ask for help when you are stuck. For this, there's the convenient FTC Discord, which has many of the top teams around the world and who are very willing to help rookie teams and share their bountiful knowledge. In addition, you can try to forge partnerships with local teams and start relations that way, which will also help you when competitions come around and you want to start making alliance selections. Lastly, it is very helpful to use resources such as FTC Lib or Roadrunner. These resources they include some of the code that you'll be implementing anyway, but they implement it for you so that you don't have to waste your time on boilerplatey stuff that every team will be doing, and you can spend more time on the code that actually makes your bot unique. So things like pathing and motor controls, most teams will have that, or many teams. So if you want to spend more time on your own specific shooting algorithm, you might use components from Roadrunner FTC Lib. Next slide. Okay, so again, it's very helpful to ask for help. And one common catch that teams fall into is that they try to do too much. So like I said, there are resources like FTC Lib and Roadrunner and WKI Lib, Easy OpenCV, so many things out there you can use. If you try to do this all yourself, you'll inevitably be overwhelmed because some things like Roadrunner it involves very complicated vector math that you'll likely need some linear algebra and some group theory to understand, but you don't need that much information to just use it. So sometimes you can take advantage of the code that's already out there in the environment instead of spending too much time on it yourself. Even though that many programmers do enjoy implementing hard things, it can be a better use of your time to share and distribute code between the open source community of FTC. Yeah.
I'm Kayla, and I'm going to be sharing advice from our engineering notebook and engineering portfolio team. Our first piece of advice is to set up as much as possible at the beginning of the season. Sections such as the team plan. Sorry, sections such as the team plan and bio sections can be set up at the beginning of the season and require little to no editing as the season continues. On the other hand, sections such as the practice section and outreach section require you to frequently update them. And so for these sections, we recommend having outlines and templates. And this makes documentation a lot easier for the rest of the season because all you have to do is go back and fill out or use a template that you've already set in place. Our second piece of advice is to view the resources provided by FIRST. For example, in Game Manual 1, FIRST shares general information about the portfolio in the notebook. In addition to this, they also go into depth and specifically state the requirements to be a candidate for each award. And in that, they share the requirements for the engineering portfolio, which is a lot of really great information. FIRST has also shared examples of high quality engineering notebooks. And so I recommend modeling your notebook off of these. Our third piece of advice is to involve all team members. This is especially important for practices or for sections such as the practice section, because it ensures that every single task that you complete throughout the season is well documented. Also, make sure that you complete these practice sheets in a timely manner. It is so easy to get behind on practice sheets, but make sure that you're keeping up with them because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to remember what you were working on or to recall various details. To help keep track of these and to complete these in a timely manner, we recommend having someone keep track of the progress of the engineering notebook and portfolio. We have team leads for the notebook and portfolio, which keep track of every section and every page, and they're always communicating with other team members to let them know the status and who needs to work on what. In addition to this, we recommend having a budgeting spreadsheet in our team plan. There's a lot of expenses throughout the year, and having a spreadsheet which lists all of this, how funds are going in and out of the team is very important and can be very helpful. Our last piece of advice is to make sure that you're directing the judge's attention. As you can imagine, the judges have a lot of information that they're going to look at from a lot of teams. And so even with the portfolio now being a lot smaller with the notebook, you want to make sure that you're directing their attention with summary pages or flagged pages so that they know what information you think is most important and what you want them to look at. Mistakes and lessons. Our biggest mistake has been getting behind on practice sheets. And so whenever we get too far behind, whoever's keeping track of what's done will let us know that we're not on top of our practice sheets, and we'll have a day where we allot practice time just to catch up. Another mistake that we've made is printing at the last minute. There have been days before qualifiers where we've had to print the notebook or information for our trifold poster, which we put up in our pit area. And so a lot of printing at the last minute can get very hectic, as you can imagine. So if you're going to potentially print out your portfolio or notebook, or in general, if there's any task that you have to do, make sure that you're not waiting for the last minute. I'll now pass it off to Caden.
All right. So the goal of judging is to explain who you are as a team and why you deserve to win awards and what your team's journey has been through the season. So to make sure your judging presentation expresses all of that,
I believe we're going through some technical difficulties.
say about your team or that you need to cover in order to be eligible for awards.
Hey, Caden, we lost you. Can you go back through all of that information again, please?
to other people. That can be coaches, mentors, parents, teachers, whoever will help your team get comfortable with speaking to other people. You can also time or video your presentation. That can help see your presentation from someone else's viewpoint, which allows you to like perfect it. And we made a list of a couple things that are going to be especially important this year, which would be the order, visuals, and attire. Since judging will likely be virtual and you won't really be able to read the room, look around at your team members, you want to make sure everyone really knows the order for judging. So like there's no awkward gaps between people talking. You also want to make sure to incorporate visuals or like maybe a presentation that people can look at on the judges can look at during the virtual meeting. And I would recommend agreeing on a team uniform in advance, because when everyone's just like on a Zoom call, it can seem a little unprofessional. Everyone's just in their own house and they're like in their pajamas or whatever. So if you like have a team uniform, it's like one easy way to incorporate professionalness into your presentation. Yeah, that's pretty much what we have for judging. And now Justin is going to talk about some general team advice.
So yeah, I'm going to be talking about some team advice for you. So our first piece of advice is that make sure you have the time to do drive practice. And this is really important because drive practice can really help you identify problems like robot movement or design. Drive practice can really help you prepare for competitions and is really useful overall. Our second piece of advice is to make sure you assign clear roles and make sure there's accountability. So for example, we as a team assign roles for the engineering notebook. So every Wednesday, we make sure that everyone is doing their assigned roles and make sure that everyone is completing the section of their engineering notebook they're responsible for. And roles are really important for making sure the team is productive and doing what they're supposed to do. Our third piece of advice is to set deadlines, and this is really crucial if you want to set high goals for yourself. For our team, we set a lot of deadlines for maybe like choosing the the prototype, the intake or output we're gonna use. So deadlines are really important if you want to be a successful team. Our fourth piece of advice is to make a checklist. And our team uses an app called Trello to keep track of what all our team members are supposed to do. Again? What was that? Sorry.
What is the site again? You said for the group.
So it's an app called Trello. It's a place where you can list basically what each team member is supposed to do. And this kind of goes with roles too. So yeah, I suggest you to check it out. It's a really good way to organize the roles for everyone. So. And what was that? Sorry.
I said thank you.
All right. Thank you. So getting back to checklists. So yeah, I mentioned Trello, which I think is a really useful app for you guys to use. And also it's really useful to make sure that everyone is, like I said earlier, is on top of things and make sure that all the team members are have a role on the team. Especially for like me, I'm a rookie, so the checklist definitely helped me get a gauge of like what I'm supposed to do. So our final piece of advice is obviously to read the game manuals, check the forums on FDC, Reddit, Discord, and utilize first resources. And this is really helpful if you want to be a successful team in general, and that you are, and this is really helpful if you want to get some good ideas, and that you're ensured that you're following all the FTC rules and regulations. So.
Before Quincy takes the next slide, I want to jump back to judging. Kaden, your mic was cutting out a little bit, so if you can go back over a few of the first points for judging.
Okay, so the where you want to approach judging is like displaying all your important topics and achievements to judges. So you start with making an outline, which are the important topics and achievements you want to cover, and make sure you're considering each sub-team, like design, build, outreach, programming, sustainability, everything that you want to cover or that you need to cover in order to be eligible for certain awards. And then once you have that, you can assign those to individual team members to cover in their scripts. And once you write a script, you can come together and work on it as a whole team. And then were you able to hear about practicing and like doing it together?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
We will now pass it off to Quincy.
So as far as advice goes, each member gave some individual advice. I don't want to get too in depth as far as my teammates, but for me specifically, questions are extremely important. You should always be questioning. Questions are very powerful. I'm not typically the type of kid to raise their hand in class, but being an FTC has taught me not knowing something is one of the most important moments of any experience, because going from not knowing anything and taking that step to ask the question and learning is one of the most enlightening experiences. I'm lucky to have had veteran members who were very knowledgeable last year, but I know since we're speaking to rookie teams, you may not have those individuals to go to, which is why we encourage you to reach out to us, other members of the STEM and engineering community. Just ask questions and get as many answers as you possibly can, because it'll make the difference. On that note, if anyone has any specific questions or obstacles they're facing this year, we invite you to ask, and we'll try and answer as best we can.
Just so that everybody knows, my name is Rocky. I'm the coach of the Nuts. We have on the line as well Phil. Phil is one of our mentors, but Phil has also been a not a referee, but a judge at many tournaments. So if you have specific questions for judging that you want to throw to a judge versus a student, you can do that. And I noticed that Paul Smith is on this as well. Paul, if it's the same Paul Smith I'm thinking of.
Yep, I'm here. Yep.
Okay, he is the head referee for the state of Ohio. So if you have any questions about the game and how to approach it, what's legal, what's not legal, you could throw those questions out now as well.
And I was also a mentor for 3 years for an FTC team. So
that's correct. Loveland, right?
Yep.
One thing that I would mention quickly that we kind of glossed over is make sure to have fun. Biggest piece of advice. This is supposed to be fun. Sounds like a lot of work. It's the most fun you'll ever have.
I think for a rookie team this year, it'll actually be a lot more straightforward because you haven't got the strategic and competitive side of being on a field with other teams trying to all do the same thing at the same time. With remote play, you've actually you got the time and you have it's all you. It's all about the team trying to accomplish the tasks.
So this is Sarah Heiss. I had a quick question for the team. Actually, this is something I've always kind of wondered, and I'm sure every team does it a little differently. But is there a specific way that you guys divvy up the tasks for each individual team member? Do you guys go by what each person's interested in or their strengths, and do you guys rotate? Does everybody get the chance to do something different, or how do you guys work that?
So at the beginning of every season, our coach, sorry. So at the beginning of every season, our coaches and mentors ask us, what do we want to do? What are we looking forward to? What do we want to work on? And so from there, we divide ourselves into sub-teams: design, build, programming, notebook. And team members can belong to one team or multiple sub-teams. And so going after this, we organize ourselves into these sub-teams, and each sub-team will come together and give out different tasks, assign tasks, come together and share tasks. And so we're able to work on really whatever we want to do and whatever we have interest in doing. And we are a great sized team in that everyone is able to do everything, and we're not kind of like forced to do anything that we don't have interest in.
That's true to a point. As coach of the team, yes, we ask them for their input, and we ask them to give us two things they want to be involved in. One is one that they're definitely interested in. Like last year, the team that we had, I believe, 6 new team members, and all 6 new team members wanted to be programmers. And so we looked at the kids and we said, hey, if everybody's programming and nobody's building, what are you really going to program? Nothing. So you can get involved in what you have an interest in, but we also try to look at the students on the team and put them in something that they might not be good at so that they learn how to get better at that as well. So we want to improve your weaknesses and not just play upon your strengths, but help you in other areas as well.
So like, for example, from like a rookie perspective, so I chose to be on the design and build team as like my main like interests, but I also said I wanted to be a little bit involved in programming as like a alternative. And so like right now I'm mainly focused on like doing CAD, learning CAD, and building prototypes. But once in a while, I also do a little bit of programming, of basic programming, just to get like a basis of programming if there's a need for me to be a programmer. So.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, guys.
You can always learn more. So push yourself outside of your comfort zone and take on new challenges, but ask questions. It's the only way you're going to learn.
Are there any questions at all from any of the rookie team members who are taking part of this presentation? Because we'd be more than happy to help you with anything that you've got on your mind. So if you've got it, please fire away.
Yeah, maybe you could tell us how far along you are with your robots. Managed to meet as a team, or are you working independently at home?
Caden, why don't you go ahead and answer that one?
We are meeting in person. We do have a robot. It's in progress. uh, my parents are always asking what the status of the robot is, and I always tell them it does move. It doesn't exactly do everything we want it to yet. We don't have input and output on there yet, but we have a drivetrain so far and a wobble goal mechanism.
And you have many different prototypes you're working through to figure out which ones you want to put on there.
And maybe you could talk about how you selected your drivetrain, because every year, every team does something different.
Right.
Yeah, every year, pretty much right after kickoff, we have meetings where we outline like basically what this game is about and what we're going to focus on. And then to pick a drivetrain, we make what we call a weighted objectives table, which is a way of analyzing the different strengths of the different versions of a mechanism. So like for a drivetrain, you might have a mechanism or a tank or an omni holonomic drivetrain. And they all have different strengths that are better suited to different games. So we would rank how important different aspects of that drivetrain would be, like maneuverability or speed or power, and then how important they are for this game, and how well each mechanism accomplishes them. And we use that to produce a ranking of the different drivetrains for each year. And this year we decided that Mechanim would be the best because there's no terrain in this game like there was in previous games. So Mechanim works to go over the field. You need to move around easily in a line to shoot the rings, and Mechanim is really good for that.
Mechanims are fairly difficult to program. Would you recommend that for a rookie team, or what would you recommend? Would you recommend something simpler?
As a programmer, I would recommend starting out with something like Tank or Omni, because it's conceptually easier to hold in your head and to program. But once you get like a handle on how to abstract away the actual motions of the bot, I would recommend at some point this year or in future seasons switching over to Mechanim and including it as a viable option. Because while it is harder to program at first, once you program away the initial the math part of it, then you can basically use it like any other drivetrain, but better in some respects.
Luke, you want to talk a little bit about the odometry we're trying this year?
Okay, so this year we have 7 wheels on our bot. The 4 Mechanim drive wheels and 3 dead wheels that are not powered, but have verb suspensions that pressure them to the ground, and encoders on them that count how many ticks they turn, which are subdivisions of a revolution. So essentially, we can calculate the speed that different parts of the bot are moving at against the ground, and using some linear algebra and group theory, we can estimate the location of the bot on the field based on the sum of previous motions. And this allows us to accurately automate different stuff in Telly. So we can press a button on the controller in Telly and have it move to the line wherever it is. It doesn't need to be a pre-programmed set of instructions. It can just calculate at runtime its location. This also helps very accurate motions in autonomous, as it has an extra means to identify where it is and how well it's going. And it can correct if it drifts a bit off.
Does anyone have programming questions? Drivetrain questions?
I have a question.
Go.
Okay. So do you recommend using Vuforia or TensorFlow to recognize the pictures on the wall?
Okay, so we don't use either of those. TensorFlow is it has a lot of potential to be used as a good image recognition software. It can be used for the pictures on the wall or for the stack of the height of the rings in the stack. Currently, there is a TensorFlow model that's already trained and provided by the FTC tech team that you can use without writing too much of your own code. However, it is fairly inconsistent because they didn't want to do all the work for you. So if you want to get a better solution for counting the stack, I would recommend using OpenCV, specifically the Easy OpenCV library, and you can find a lot more about that on the Discord if you join that. In terms of looking at the navigation targets on the wall, I have never done that in my experience in FTC. I believe our team tried it a year prior to my joining the team, and it wasn't ultimately used. It's widely seen as less accurate than solutions such as odometry to tell you where you are. But if you have success with it, then that's good. And basically, it's just trial and error, and that's the engineering design process. So, good luck. I can't answer that question, but someone can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also have a question. Do you guys recommend any specific IDE for where we write our code?
If you choose to use blocks, I believe MIT App Inventor or OnBot via the robot controller or control hub. Otherwise, if you try to use Java or Kotlin, I would strongly recommend the use of Android Studio, which you can find it on Google's website. It's provided by them, and it has lots of nice features like a very well-developed autocomplete system, and it can tell you problems in your code before you compile and run and help you catch bugs while you're still coding, which helps a lot. Also, it is basically the standard for FTC, and you can find details about it in the wiki of the FTC repo on GitHub. I can link to that in the chat. Also, that wiki is somewhat incomplete, and a much more thorough version developed by FTC teams can be found at gm0.org. That stands for Game Manual 0. So that can help you get a lot of this stuff set up.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else got any other questions out there that we can help you with? We are happy to do it.
Maybe you could talk about where you get your building resources from. You know, where you go get parts cut, or do you do it in a workshop, or go outside and get it done?
So as Caden previously mentioned, I believe we are fortunate enough to be sponsored by our local makerspace, the Manufactory. And so we're able to use a lot of the tools provided by them and machinery provided by them. And so in this way, we're able to make a lot of custom parts. In addition to this, we buy a lot of parts from, for example, Rev or Anti-Mark. And so if we're not buying parts for them, we're able to make our own custom parts.
So some teams 3D print parts like phone holders and some simple things, right? Do you recommend that as for a rookie team, or should they pretty much stick with a kit that they may have got through first?
There, our team, as far as I am aware, have not. We haven't used one of the kits that you may be familiar with. However, if you are using a kit, I think that 3D printing parts may be a way to like customize the kit and to bring an extra level of innovation. We do 3D print some of our parts, and so for like you said, some of the smaller parts, we do use 3D printed parts. So I personally think that as a rookie team, you would be able to make more innovative parts and other parts in addition to using a kit.
Let me go further and answer that question, because you guys have all come in and followed in with the teammates who initially had to go, didn't have the ability to custom make their parts because the manufacturer wasn't around at that time. So rookie teams, if you don't have the ability to make your own parts, obviously you're going to buy them. You may buy a kit. The only problem with the kits is you're limited in your ingenuity of what you can build and how you can do it, because you're limited by whatever their structure is. The team that I have coached for all 9 years initially got so fed up with that, and they realized that they could only get so far in competition with pre-made things, that they really truly wanted to start custom making parts, because that gave them the ability to make the type of robot that eventually they wanted to have. So early on, it might be best to do a kit unless you've got access to other items that you can custom make things. And if you know how to do CAD and you can get some things lasered out or water jetted out, if you've got companies in your areas to do that, that's great. But if you don't, kits can be a nice way to go, because they can solve a lot of problems, but they create other ones because they do limit your creativity.
Yeah, there's always obstacles that are financial. What's your budget? What's your fundraising like? What's the skill set of your coaches and mentors? If you're, relying on your parents for help. But we've seen robots compete virtually made from cardboard or scraps of wood, and they are sometimes competitive, sometimes they're not, but they're having fun and they're learning. So I wouldn't allow anything to be an obstacle to you. Be creative. If you have to make your own parts, make them out of whatever you have available that you can use, but learn from it.
Outside of the manufacturer, do you know of any other resources in the Cincinnati area you can recommend a team? I think the Cincinnati library downtown has 3D cutting capability.
Yeah, so the mains library, they do have a makerspace with laser cutting and 3D printing. Also, if you have any contacts at UC, or you're taking a college credit plus classes at UC and you get a UC student ID, then you can use UC's makerspace at the 1819 Innovation Hub, which has lots of advanced tools like WaterJet, I believe, and other machinery. It is all for free, if I remember correctly. So that is an opportunity if you have that available.
Okay, any other questions? Again, there have been a lot of programming questions, a couple of build things. Any questions about this year's game that Paul would be able to answer for you as far as rules go? Anything you're not quite sure of, you read it, you think it means this? Any questions at all along those lines?
I guess I should point out, I don't know if everybody is aware, but there are some monthly calls with First. I think Sarah has maybe forwarded out the information, or First have provided information, but I looked at some of the recordings that they had, and you can, once a month, they have a 1 hour call with the game experts, another one with the scoring system. I think there's another one on judging. And another one is an open meeting on any technical issues you've got with your robot, kind of an inspection type thing. Recordings are all out there on First's YouTube site. So, but if you've got any questions, First, you can answer get on the call and answer your question. There were a lot, I sat in the game one the other day. There were a lot of questions. They were pretty straightforward, but everybody was getting their concerns or any questions answered immediately. So take advantage of those monthly calls if you want any help in any part of the game or the judging aspects that you're uncertain about.
All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, we'll go ahead and get this all wrapped up for tonight. But remember, you can reach out to us via email. That was up there in the presentation earlier. And please feel free to let us know if you do have questions, because we'd be happy to help you out this year in whatever way we can. Okay, then that will end it.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody have a good night.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting this on.
Bye.
Thank you.